Hello, everybody. Tell me if you have any difficulty hearing me. Um, all right, great to be back. We've got questions this time. I think we went. I think last week was extremely uh different. I don't mind doing different, but it's nice to have questions. Let me bring this down. I have two monitors, and it looks like I'm looking up when I'm looking at the screen. Okay, so here we go. All right. So let's start with Cardo. Hello, Cardo. Hello, Gabriel. Nice to see you guys. Cardo says, "Hi, Eddie. How are you? I'm fine. Thank you. I have a question. If you have to choose between over practice or under practice, what would you go for?" Now, that depends on the context. Um, so in my system, there are times when I want to practice as much as possible to the point of over practicing. I do this relatively twice a week. And if I'm sticking to my schedule, which is not always the case, but if I'm sticking to my schedule, that would be Tuesday and Friday that I would over practice. And the rest of the week, I would do the opposite of that. And the way I see this, I came from two different camps educationally. I came from the no pain, no gain camp, and I also came from never practice tired camp. I have teachers on both sides of that. And it didn't make sense to me to uh, pick one or the other. It doesn't make sense when you look at how all progress works. It's the alternation between things of that nature that gives you strength. So yes, there are certain days where I will go for it. On Tuesday, on my official Tuesdays, I don't limit my time whatsoever. It's not uncommon for me to get as much as 8 hours of practice on a Tuesday. Now, that hasn't happened uh, recently, but it's not uncommon. So, yes, for in my system, there are times when you want to over practice, and there are times when you want to under practice. Um, and just alternating between those two actually makes you a better player, in my opinion. Um, so I hope that answers the question. There's also other times when other contexts. I don't believe in saving my chops for a gig. Now that said, um, doesn't that depend on the gig? I hope that makes sense. I do not believe in so the gigs I have. It's not that the music is so important or so unimportant. That's not it. I think really what it comes down to is how much they respect the trumpet player. If there's no respect for the trumpet player, then there's no need for you to. And this is something I had to learn the hard way. If there's no respect for the trumpet player, and what do I mean by that? Nobody can hear the trumpet anyway. You're playing in this band and everything's loud but the trumpet. If you hear a recording that they do from the PA system, if you go out there and listen out front, the all that effort you put that you invested into having a great sound, into having good flexibility, great technique, all of that was for nothing. If that gig was the the epitome of what your music career was like, if the whole purpose of your life as a trumpet player was that gig, um, it would actually be kind of depressing. But the point I'm making is, uh, basically, it's a form of disrespect for the trumpet player. I don't normally talk like that, right? Uh, but it is disrespectful when the band puts the trumpet player in a compromised situation. There's no need to worry about blowing your lip out before you get to the gig. Uh, you can play hard during the day, go to your gig, and if it's a little bit compromised, who cares? Nobody's going to hear it anyway. So, and most of my gigs fall in that category, not all of them. So, and it's true. If I have a gig with my jazz band, we used to have a club here called Saison, and it was the premier jazz club in town, and uh, that would be an exception because there's no microphone. The people in the band are gonna know that how to balance and stuff like that. And the people that literally the people in the front row are right under your spit valve. So in a case like that where it does matter and you're not being disrespected, I have no problem with uh, backing off on that day. So yes, there is a lot of context that will go into me deciding whether to push it or whether to back off. I hope that answers your question. All right. Um, Gabriel says, Eddie, I have a question. Everybody wants to play high notes. I would like to practice pedals more. I have troubles going from F sharp to F. After this, after this, they play better. Any advice, please? So basically, you're talking about pedal tones, I think. Um, there's ways to do that. If you start with lip bends from C down and follow that, right? Let me, this way you can see the valves, okay? Did you see what I did? I did C B C, then I did C B C again, but when I lifted the finger from the B back to the C, I tried to keep the pitch back down. Hello, Jeffrey. I tried to keep the pitch at the same pitch as the B. So basically, this is a lip bend, right? There's no difference. Am I saying that right? There's no difference between a lip bend and a pedal tone. It's the same thing. But if you do that now with B flat, and then after you do that, you can go down like that. Now, there are some people who have more difficulty with the lip bends like that. Um, uh, it's very difficult to tell somebody how to do that. Um, my advice has always been so. This is where I'm kind of weird as a teacher, right? I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to because I don't think that's possible. I'll say stuff. I'll word things a certain way. Um, these kind of exercises kind of get your foot in the door, so that if you can do what I just did here down to B flat, if you can do that going down in half steps, I'm keeping the same pitch each time. right? If I'm doing that, then when I get down to F sharp, and you know what I'm going to say also, at this stage, it doesn't matter if it's a F. If you haven't done lip bends before, I'm not so concerned about what the pitch is that you're buzzing through the horn. I'm not so concerned about that. I'm more interested in just the mechanics of pulling that note below, because the mechanics of that, the difference between getting F and one of those other arbitrary notes, the difference is that the F takes more control. That's it. But you can't expect that kind of control when you are first starting. That doesn't make any sense. You can't expect that kind of control. So yes, when you very first start, you know how people do the siren? They do that. Well, there's nothing wrong with doing something siren like on the low F sharp. And that's going to help you discover those mechanics of how to get down there. I hope that makes sense. So that's my. Oh, and what I was saying earlier is, as a teacher, I actually encourage you to listen. The reason I don't say what those other people say is because I don't actually think it's true. But that doesn't mean, just because it's not true, doesn't mean that you can't take what they said and get some ideas out of it and change. You know what I mean? Change the way you think. That's what. So to me, there's a lot of stuff that's taught in trumpet that's just physically not true. That they'll say this, they'll say that. It's just not true. I don't care. That doesn't mean that it doesn't work. We talk sometimes about having visualizations. A lot of those untruths are wonderful visualizations. So, like, for example, people say, it's not true that you have to push more air through the horn. Well, I agree with that. It's not true that you have to push more air through the horn. But sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, the best thing you can say to a student is push more air through the horn. It's not true. It doesn't matter that it's not true. That particular student needed to hear that at that time. And by hearing those words, push more air through the horn, they put all the muscles in the right spot, doing the right thing, and the sound came out the way it was supposed to come out. So these people who say, well, it's not true. Now, what I won't do is go around speaking those untruths, okay? But I don't have a problem with it. And so what I'm saying is, in the context of the pedal tones, is go listen to what these different people say and experiment with that stuff. Now you're asking, and I'll come back to this other question in a second. Now you're asking, I thought F was first valves. There's two kinds of pedal tones, and I do both of them. Right? And yes, you can. The second set that I do is going to have F with first valve. Now, I like toying around with taking the B flat and lipping it down to the F. So we'll do it first with C. All right? So if you can lip the B flat down to an F, then you also have the control that it takes to play the the other one, right? So if I was you, and if that's what the main question is how to play the pedal F first valve, then that's how I would approach that specific problem, is to lip the B flat down to the F many times so that you get used to that. So what I just played now is B flat to the F, F sharp, F, back up to B flat. Very cool exercise. Anyway, I hope that helps. All right. Drew says, Eddie, what are some of your favorite exercises to increase flexibility and tone? So, flexibility, some of my favorites. Okay. Well, I would first have to say my favorites are the ones in my book. I would not put them in my books. I shouldn't say books, plural. I would not put them in my books if I didn't like them. And now, for those that are not using my books, I would have to say that I like the Arbin, is it page 125 or page 115, where it goes to the intervals? I keep forgetting the page number. I know there's a 1 and a 5. I think it's 125. It might be 115. So now I haven't played these in a long, long time, but I used to do them all the time. Right? And I like those. I like to do them. Uh, what am I thinking? Oh, like in an expansion order. Instead of starting at the first one, going to the last one, I'll do, let's say there's 12, I would do 6, 7, 5, 8, 4, 9. That way you're getting higher and lower as you go. And you can do, if you look at the bottom of the page, it gives you possible slurs and tongues that you can add to that. So I would have to say that my favorite ones outside of what is in my books, my favorite flexibility exercises are those Arbin studies, the intervals. And for tone, really, my approach to tone is not like most people's approach. I think your tone comes from your practice habits. I don't think. Now that said, I understand that there is a level of musical self-awareness that happens when you really listen to your tone, and in the context of having listened already to many hours of professional trumpet players, and if you listen to what's coming out of your bell and you compare it to what you've heard them do, there's a lot that can happen for you on, let's say, a set of long tones, on the Chickowitz studies, stuff like that, because those are going to be going slow enough that you can actually compare your tone to what you've been hearing in the pros. I don't think that there's a set of exercises that will just do it for you, plug and play. I'm going to do these exercises, now I'm going to have a great tone. I don't believe that tone works that way. Tone is so how do we get a good tone? There's only one way to get a good tone, period. Only one way. You have to have exact amount of air pressure to match the exact amount of resistance. That's the only way. If you have too much resistance, you're going to get a pinched sound. If you don't have enough resistance, you're going to get a dull sound. If you push too hard from here, you're going to get a what I call a toilet sound, if that makes sense, right? Uh, you understand what I'm saying? Sitting on the toilet, right? You're going to have a toilet sound. If you don't push enough from here, you're going to have a timid, weak sound. To get a good sound, you have to have exactly right air pressure against exactly the right amount of uh, resistance. Now, what is resistance? We're talking about the embouchure, we're talking about the teeth position, we're talking about the arch of the tongue. Now, I'm going to tell you outright, to get a good tone is impossible. And I'm going to let that sink in. To get a good tone is impossible with your conscious mind. The subtleties that are involved are impossible to control consciously. The way you get a good tone is always subconscious. This is where I agree with um, schools like the what is it called, Song and Wind. This is the area where I agree with them, the people who teach that stuff, going back to Arnold Jacobs. I agree with them. The process of making beautiful music is a largely mental process, meaning that it doesn't happen in your conscious mind. If you want a great tone. Now, so there are exercises that you can do to kind of speed that along a little bit. Long tones is one of them. Long tones help you make that connection between what you want to sound like and where you are right now. And the reason why long tones work that way is because all the other stuff has been put on hold. You're not tonguing, you're not going fast fingerings, you're just playing a long note and listening to what's coming out. And by the way, those of you who do use my books, and let's say you're playing a one of the long tones, when you get to, so the first note and then the high note and then the low note, you should hold those. And I meant to give that as an example, but then I put the horn down. On the last note too, I should have held that longer because that's what I was trying to demonstrate. You want to hold that last note out. You want to hold that high G out. You want to hold the first note before you bend it, after you bend it. You want to hold those out because that's when you're going to be letting that sound come into your ears. So I wouldn't say, now that I'm saying that though, I would think that tone, one thing that really speeds this process along a lot is the lip bends. Lip bends are awesome at bringing that awareness to you more quickly. But let me tell you this, if you've never heard great trumpet playing in your life before, it's going to be far, far more difficult because you won't even know if you got that. Your efforts to accomplish that, you wouldn't even know that you got there. When do you know if you've arrived if you don't know where you're going? I hope that makes sense. Gabriel says, Eddie, do you think the C trumpet is harder than the B flat? Since I'm practicing more on the C, the B flat seems easier. What do you think, sir? I think that there are good horns and bad horns and everything in between, right? So what I had a terrible C trumpet. I was in the middle of a brass quintet gig one time, and I would play on my B flat, and it was when I first got my B flat. This I'm going to tell you, this B flat I've got, it's a 72 Bach 72 large bore, not a medium large. Most of the 72s out there are medium large. This is a large bore. Um, this is the best trumpet I've ever played in my life. B flat. For the stuff, I enjoy this horn because I like the sound. When I say the B flat, the Bach is the best trumpet, I'm talking about the you know, overall sounding instrument. It's a great horn. Uh, and now, and to play an inferior C next to it. So to pick up I was on a brass quintet gig, and I'd play the B flat, and then I'd go over here and play the C. And it was so bad. I ended up selling the horn back to the guy who sold it to me because he said he needed it. But compared to my B flat, it played terrible. I will tell you, I'm saving my pennies figuratively. I haven't saved anything, and it's been over 10 years. I'm saving my pennies for what is it? A Blackburn C trumpet. I really, really want a Blackburn C, and I can tell you that that would not happen. What you're talking about and what I just described in that brass quintet would not happen with a Blackburn. I promise you that. So I think it has to do. I think the C trumpets are a little bit more difficult to to build. That's my theory. I think I think because the B flat is standard, I think the technology that they put into the C, there's something not quite right with it. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. And I think that the Blackburn C is probably the best C out there on the market, in my opinion, and according to the way I play. It's an awesome C. I would really like to have one. The thing that prevents me from getting one is just the fact that I don't have any C trumpet gigs anymore. And it just doesn't make sense to buy something as a hobby when this is what I do. I hope that makes sense. Okay. If there's no other questions right now, I would like to go through. Um, Gabriel says they are same quality, both German rotary and unfortunately very expensive. Right. I'm going to answer 3 questions that came in on the website. These are jazz-related questions. This is from John in Ireland. He says, this is the first question. What equipment do you or your students use in recording their solos over backing tracks, microphone and recorders, as a way of collecting up their jazz vocabulary? So, with the students, it really varies. Some of them are just using their phones. And then I have other students that have better equipment than I do. So I do believe in I think the best that you can do is to have a digital interface of some sort. This is what I use. This is a Tascam 4x4. Okay, they mean 4x4 because it's got 4 outputs and 4 inputs, I think. Yeah. Yeah, see 4 outputs here and 4 inputs. For some reason, when I bought this, the first input was in and out, and then it just stopped. So I'm very disappointed about that. So I only really have 3 inputs. So I do believe in having one of those if you want to do a good job. You don't have to have that. Most of my students use Audacity. If you don't know what Audacity is a recording software that you can use, and you can use just a USB mic Once again, it's better to have an interface like that. And then the microphone I use, let me go grab it. You would think I would have this memorized because I've had to say so many times, but I keep forgetting what this is. It's a AKG C1000S. Um, with the exception of my first album, the Vintage Trumpet Treasures, all of my recordings have been on this microphone. I like it a lot. But then I haven't had much of any other microphone. This thing here, not good for recording the trumpet. I'm sorry to say. It's not good for recording trumpet. It's nothing anywhere close to this. And in fact, I paid more for this than I did for this. But we didn't buy it. We did not buy this for recording trumpet on it. We bought it because my wife does voiceovers, and it is a better microphone for voiceovers. Okay, so I hope that answered the question. Um, oh, and by the way, we also use. I have some students that are using what's it called? iReal Pro. And you can actually record yourself from inside iReal Pro. I haven't done it myself, but my students have. So that while you're listening to iReal Pro and playing, it's recording what you're playing, and you can actually export a wave file after you're done. So that's something worth checking out. All right, so next question. Also, I'm finding it hard to motivate myself in transcribing recordings and solos. Instead, I was going to use written transcribed solos, jazz etudes, to pick out motifs I like and memorize them, to add to my vocabulary. What is your opinion? When working on your routine, for example, tonalization studies, etc., I sing every pattern I play as a way to improve my ear. Well, that's good. I have students that do that, and they're doing very, very well with it. So the question is it okay to use written etudes and written uh, transcription books? That's a great way to get started. I hope I never said that was a bad thing. There are some people who will tell you that's a bad thing, and I disagree with them. You just have to keep in mind what is what. And also, a lot of times they say, "Oh, you have to just transcribe by ear, or you're nobody." Um, I don't believe they're talking to beginners. I don't believe they're talking to people who have never done this before. You've got to get started somehow. And I think using other people's transcriptions is a great way to do that. And the more you're aware of that stuff, the better uh, the better skill you're going to have for doing it yourself later. So no, I don't have any problem with written out solos and etudes. And then finally, he says, should I learn motifs in all 12 keys, or am I wasting my time? Thank you, Eddie, for taking my questions. Okay, so let me tell you how I do it. The first thing I do when I learn a new lick, so the motifs come from the licks, right? So if I go, let's do that. That would be the lick. And let's say the part I'm working on is the last part. Let's say that's the part I want to incorporate. That's the motif. That's the motif. So I would not do a motif in every key. That wouldn't make any sense. What I would do is play the motif 10 times. Da, da, ba, da. Da, 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 da. I would do that 10 times. And by the way, I don't look at the music when I'm doing that. And then I would add, I would do that 10 times. And then I would do the rest of it and do that 10 times. I would do that 10 times. Then once I have the whole lick, I would now transpose the lick into all keys, and I would do each one of them 10 times. If it's something I'm doing not just for fun, I actually do silly stuff like this for fun. If I'm really serious about it, it's something I want to add to my repertoire, my jazz vocabulary. I will do it 10 times in each key, right? Um, so yes, I do. Before I move to that next stage where I'm gonna really break things down, which is something I've not shared with anybody on YouTube yet. That next stage. So yes, I will play the lick in every key, and then I will after that break things down. The reason why we do it in every key is to get the sound of the lick in our ears. It's not for the technique. The technique will be of no use to you if you can't hear it. The technique is of no use to you if there's not a whole system of playing in that key that goes with it. I learned that the hard way. I did everything in every key in college and high school. And I only could improvise in 2 or 3 different keys. So, and what comes after playing it in every key is where the real work starts. And unfortunately, I'm not ready to share that with the public yet. And I apologize. I don't mind, if people take lessons, I don't mind like working them through that. It takes literally months for people to understand how I approach the motifs. It really does. It's a very thorough, very overly involved process, but it works. Um, anyway, I hope that answers John's questions. Gabriel says, Eddie, I have one more question if you have time. I'm practicing hearing 32 etudes. What is the highest BPM, beats per minute, you suggest for the Etude 1 and 2? I'm not a big fan of fast practice. Let me go get the book. This, by the way, is why I am organized. I like being able to go to my bookshelf and well, it says 120 on mine, and the other one's 126. But let me finish what I was going to say. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so that's what I was about to say is I don't believe now I don't remember actually playing this in public. So if there's a recording of this out there of me playing it, I'd like to see that. Um, but yes, this is okay, let me get back to what I was trying to say. I'm not a big fan of honor the wishes of the composer, and by playing exactly the right tempo. There is no such thing as the exact right tempo. You know, I am a composer. Anyone who wants to say that I'm not a composer because of whatever reason, they're just that's just nonsense. I spend literally hours a day composing music. So, um, I don't know. It's not that anyone's ever said that to me, but I think sometimes if they see that you only write trumpet music, I think maybe someone would say, "Oh, you're not really a composer or whatever." Um, but you know, I know guys that brag that they've written 50 pieces, right? Um, I had a written 50 pieces by 1980, what, 87, 88. I already passed the 50 piece mark. And I'm writing more now than I ever had before. So, yeah, and I understand that their pieces are more major, maybe. But that's what I'm saying. Is a lot of people don't think I'm sure people don't think I'm a real composer. But as a composer, I can tell you that the tempo is one of the last things I think about. And in fact, sometimes me as the composer, I get it wrong. Believe it or not. Um, you know, I write these jazz etudes for the state. And there's a lot of times where I finish composing the etude and it's an afterthought. I'm like, let me see, I'll put this tempo. And then they'll publish the etude, and now I have to make a recording of it. And I'm like, I can't play that. I'm the one that wrote it, right? And I'm struggling to record it at that tempo. This idea that somehow you have dishonored the composer by playing at a different tempo, I don't think that's a thing. I cannot believe. Now it's different, you know. I remember the Shostakovich, was it Symphony Number 5? I think it's Symphony Number 5. And you're sitting there, and he has the tempi mapped out so that over a period of whatever it is, 5, 7, 10 minutes, um, the the tempo is gradually speeding up in very small increments. In that case, the tempo matters. I hope that makes sense. Because in that case, the tempo is part of the composition. So if you start off too fast, when it speeds up, you're going to be entirely out of sync, right? If you speed up too fast, but don't speed, I mean, if you start off too fast, but don't speed up incrementally the way it says, you've just ruined the whole piece. But in most compositions, the tempo is not part of the composition. You can play it fast, you can play it slow, and it really comes down to you selling it. There's nothing wrong with that as a tempo. Also, playing it in the right tempo is also obviously a good thing. Now, I always played it heavy like that. I like it heavy like that. It doesn't have to be that way because there's nothing in the piece nothing written in the etude that says it needs to be all heavy marcato like that. but I like playing it like that. That's how it sounds to me, right? Um, so, but yes, I'm not one of those people. One of the things that I learned along the way about publishing and copyright and stuff like that, a lot of times publishers will add after the fact stuff to the music, like tempos, articulations, dynamics, stuff like that. The publishers will add that because they have to legally to sell public domain stuff. That's for you to legally sell something that somebody else wrote, but it's in the public domain. You have to change something. And by adding tempos and adding uh, dynamics, articulations, and stuff like that, you now make it legal for you to publish. So a lot of people, when they say, we're playing Bach, and you're not playing those staccatos, and so you need to honor the wishes of the composer. Well, Bach never put that in his music. That was a financial decision, a legal decision to put that stuff in there so they could make money off of Bach's music. So depending on the music, right? I just told you earlier that the tempos were built, are part of the composition for the Shostakovich symphony. I forget which one. It's either 1 or 5. I think it's 5. But most of the time, so you got to use your mind and know which is which. Most of the time on stuff like that, I ignore the dynamics, I ignore the slurs and the articulation, and I do it. Now, it's different if you're in an ensemble. If it's in the ensemble, you have to play the way it's written so that everybody's together. So don't get me wrong. I'm talking in this case as a soloist. And in this case, if you're playing etudes, you are a soloist. So yes, you do what sounds good to you. Period. This culture that we have that it's got to be right. This is false. There is no right. What they mean is we want you to do what we want you to do because if you want to be part of our club, then you have to do it our way. And I'm okay with that as long as you know what it really is. I'm okay with that as long as you know that it's not really like that. Oh, you have to do the dynamics. Well, there were no dynamics in that era. Dynamics only came into music 100 years later. So don't tell me I have to pay honor to the composer by doing stuff the composer didn't even know existed yet. Anyway, that's one of those topics. So anyway, so the bottom line is I don't have a problem people playing. There's a famous video. Look for what's the name of that eccentric pianist that used to have to carry his chair to every gig. He had a favorite chair and he would take it to every concert. Glenn Gould. And there's a famous concert that he did, or shall I say infamous? I will say famous because I actually like this. Where they were about to play and what's the composer's name? Bernstein. Bernstein turns around and says to the audience, just so you know, it was not our choice to play these tempos. Because he took the slow movement and made it fast, and the fast movement and made it slow. And Bernstein had to turn around because apparently they got in a fight about it in the rehearsal. And Gould won the fight, and they did it his way. And so he did the slow movement fast and the fast movement slow. Right? I I love it. I love it. We talk often on this channel about the religion of trumpet players. And In the bigger scheme of things, there's also a music religion where they talk like that. They talk about honoring the wishes of the composer. And me as a composer, if the rest of the world is anything like me, which is probably not likely, but if the rest of the world, if all the other composers are anything like me, the tempo is the least of my concerns. Really. Okay, Cardo says, Eddie, can you talk a bit about different brands like Shelky, Bach, and Kahn? So, my stance on brands is that I believe that when you're picking a horn, brand should always be secondary. The primary concern should be the internal dimensions. I've always called it internal dimensions. In other words, we're not looking at how heavy the metal is. We're not looking at, the difference between the Taylor trumpets with all the extra metal or a lightweight Bach or something. Those things we're not concerned about. What we want to find is the shoe that fits. And what we're looking for is the right bore size, the right bell size, the right lead pipe size. The primary concern is the size of the internal dimensions. If you find a horn that you like, it's not the fact that it's Bach or Shelky or Kahn that you like about it. If you can play on it, there's a reason why you can play on it. It fits your needs. It physically, the size of it fits what works for you. After you find out what you like, so let me give you an example. In both of these horns, I have a relatively small lead pipe and a relatively large bell. I think this one's bigger than the other one. Oh, they're about the same. This one's a little bit bigger, but the bell flares sooner on the 72 than it does on the other horns. So I knew long ago that I preferred a small lead pipe, a large bore, and a big bell. I think that the small lead pipe balances those other two larges. Okay, the large bore, the large bell. I think the smaller lead pipe helps balance. If you didn't have that balance, it would have a terrible sound. So I think size is first, not brand. Once you know what you need for size, that's when you go to the brand and say, what do you have like this? Now we can start talking about construction and how well the horns are made and whether the valves are move very well and stuff like that. But a horn, I'll tell you what, you can take a well-constructed instrument that doesn't fit you and it's going to suck. I don't normally use that word. I don't know why I said it now, but it's the truth. If you have a great, well-built horn that doesn't fit you, the internal dimensions are not what you need as a player. It doesn't matter how well built the horn is. That craftsmanship is not going to make you a better player. That craftsmanship is not going to make up for a mismatch in size. Some people need small horns, some people need large horns. I remember in the 90s when the Wild Thing first came out, right? Apparently, and I've never played a Wild Thing, but the Wild Thing is apparently a huge instrument. It's huge. There's some people that need that. I don't think I could play on a Wild Thing because I think it's overall too big, just based on what I've heard people say. I need some smallness. And like I said, I get that smallness from the lead pipe. And by the way, if you have a big bell and a small lead pipe, that means your instrument is more conical, right? The small on the one end, big on the other end. So my trumpet, my B flat trumpet, and this one here, both of these lean towards a flugelhorn sound. In fact, I remember when I first played this in public, someone took a video, put it on Facebook, and one of my friends said, and it was after I got the beard, so the guy couldn't recognize me. Um, he's kind of halfway famous, Andre Hayward, right? And he says, "Hey, who's the guy on the flugelhorn?" He was going by the way it sounded, right? He says, "Who's the guy with the flugelhorn?" And they said, "That's Eddie Lewis." Oh, he says, "I should have recognized him." Um, but yes, my horns have a tendency, even the Bach. Has just a little bit of a leaning towards a flugelhorn sound. And that's because of that small opening at the beginning and a big opening at the top, at the end. So Karen asks, "Hello, Karen. Nice to see you." Karen asks, "How does anyone know what size is best for them?" That's trial and error. I wish it was otherwise, but I don't know any other way to find out other than trial and error. And the best way to do that trial and error is to go to a music convention where they all have their instruments set up and you can go play. I know it's a little bit frustrating to do that because um, everybody else is trying to play too. So it gets kind of loud and raucous, and you have the people over in the corner trying to play high notes and stuff like that. But really, the best way is to try different instruments. And aside from that, um, just paying attention to what difference, like if you do make different changes or whatever, like you have two trumpets, right? If I'm not mistaken, trying this one, trying that one, finding what you like about this one, finding what you don't like about it, and comparing it, and in that comparison, then you look at what's different size wise between those two. That's not always easy to find out, but there are websites online that will tell you like bore size and uh, what size the lead pipe is, how big the bell is. There are websites online that can tell you stuff like that. I hope that makes sense. Now, one thing I will also say is that the mouthpiece is more important than the horn. Finding the right mouthpiece size is more important than finding the right horn size. And yes, I understand that that's the mouthpiece horn system. And if you change horns, then you might have to change mouthpieces as well. But for the most part, if you find something that works for you on one horn, you're at least in the right ballpark for finding what works for you on another horn. But yes, the mouthpiece is a lot more important to find the right size and the right shape, right? If there's a lot of people that really should be playing on deep V cups because that's the sound that they're trying to get, and you can't get that sound with. Let me get my. So this is my deep V cup shell key, right? I'm gonna put it in my Bach trumpet. How much more mellow is that? Um now with with the C cup, this is a basic C cup. With the C cup, you get more of a compact sound. It's not a washed out sound. I can't play this on most of the gigs, even though I love the sound of it so much. It's a washed out sound. It's a nice, mellow, flugelhorn type sound, but it doesn't work on the gigs. So a lot of times this mouthpiece just stays home. I shouldn't leave it at home, but if I know where I'm going, and I usually practice on. Lately, I've been doing most of my practice on the Pudgy with the big fat V cup. Um, and it's just a matter of laziness. I just leave that mouthpiece on that horn, and I'll take this other horn and mouthpiece to the gig. So, all right. You know, Gabriel says that YouTube link is you playing, hearing, and I like it a lot. I try to emulate your sound and rhythm and your light staccato. I need to look that up. I have no memory of that. Wow, look at that. Oh, from one of my students. Ha! I don't remember that at all. And it's only 2 years old. I must have been busy that at that time. You know, when I'm really, really busy, I can't remember what I've done. I just published I gotta tell you guys about this. I just published a trumpet trio like 2, 3 weeks ago, right? And I'm trying to work. I've got really dozens, literally dozens of pieces I haven't published yet that I've composed already. And so I get to this other piece that I'm publishing next week or the week after. And I'm like, this sounds familiar. And I wrote the same composition twice. Fortunately, one is a trio and one's a quartet. And they're slightly different. And I don't know which one I wrote first. I think I wrote both of them last year or early this year. I don't remember writing 2 versions of the same song. So yeah, 2 years ago, recording that, and it's got 1,700 views. Look at that. I need to record more, more herring. Oh, that's interesting. Oh man, 1,700 views in 2 years. Wow. I need to like record some more of that. Anyway, that's very interesting. I'm glad you like it, Gabriel, and I'm glad you could get something out of it. Anthony says, hello, Anthony, by the way. Hello, Eddie and everybody. I am on my break from practicing, can listen for 30 minutes, then must go practice. Wow, I'm inspired, Anthony. I think we'll stop now and go practice. Everybody go practice. Right? I have stuff to do. I can't practice right now. Gabriel has a request. Gabriel says, record study 2, please, so I can do it. Oh, I have to put that on my list. Where's my to-do list? Let me grab a index card and as you guys can see, I took down all the stuff from that wall. I'm gonna start doing recordings against that wall again. You can see the lighting is set up, and I won't start today. I gotta patch. I have some paint. I'm gonna patch the places where the holes were for the nails. And then I'll start doing some recordings. I got a bunch of things I want to do. and I'm looking forward to recording again. Uh, a few hours a day at least. Let me write down this. Yeah, I'll put that on the to-do list along with all the other stuff. All right. Well, we've passed the hour mark. Anybody have any last minute questions before we close down? You're welcome, Gabriel. I had this idea. I want to record. You know how I do those unadorned trumpet hymns? I want to do some in the same way. I want to do some of the like standard jazz things. Just real calm like that. Hello, Raimo. Nice to see you. You know, there's that tune that what's his name? The trumpet player, the singer. Anyway, he plays this tune, and I'm gonna do it in a lower key. I think I'm gonna do it in a low key on this horn. Right, I get along with. I skipped some notes. Let me play it again. Right, I would like to do that without any accompaniment, real slow, heavy reverb, and make it very pensive like that. You know, like the unadorned hymns. I think that would be cool. And I think. Oh, by the way, let me tell you guys about this. Someone stole my music. Someone took one of my YouTube. You guys know I have over 100 free improvisation videos, right? Over 100 of them. And someone took one of those free improvisations, put it on his own album, changed the name of it, and said he composed it. And so he puts the video up, and YouTube sends me a notice, says that that I've posted something that was someone else's copyright. Can you believe that? They want to. They said, "Oh, it's okay. Any ad money we get from this, we'll just give it to that guy." Right? No. So I fought it, and they reversed it. But that's the first. I remember when I started putting those videos out, I thought, you know what? These are free improvisations. How long is it going to be before I play a sequence of notes that's copyrighted by somebody, and the machine will pick up and say, "Oh, this is that song," and try to um, say that I've taken somebody's copyrighted material. But yes, it was on a mafia themed. The name that he gave it was a 19th century sheriff from Italy. They gave my piece his name. Let me see if I can remember the guy's name. I should have saved all of that, because now I can't remember what video it was. So anyway, I don't know how far I need to take my I don't know if they've taken that video down. But yes, somebody stole my music and then tried to get my royalties from my own videos. Oh, the world we live in. And the guy lists himself as a composer. I'll tell you what, if I was a composer and I was taking other people's improvisation and saying I wrote it, I would be ashamed of myself. Why not just write something and have a trumpet player record it for you? You know, the copyright issue on a improvisation, that's going to be awfully hard for them to prove that they had it first, right? It's an improvisation, and they're using my recording. How in the world would it shows me playing the instrument? How in the world could they possibly prove that they had it first? um, it's an improvisation. That music does not exist except for right there. So anyway, all right. So anyway, God, it's nice to hang out with you guys as always. Um, thank you for your questions. Last week was kind of weird without the questions. And and I forgot to mention. So let me put this in. Did I close it? No, I did not close it. Here is a link. So Karen had the idea that I could have a mailing list. If you click on that link, it should put you on a mailing list page where you can sign up. And then I will give details for the next oncoming Q and A so that nobody's left out. Okay. We're just trying it for now because I'm not so sure that these mailing lists actually get to everybody. Karen says, and this was her idea, by the way. Karen says, these sessions help to motivate me. Woohoo! I'm glad to hear that. I never saw a notification, but I found you. I was out shopping and got here late. Next one. When next one will be? Well, I don't think it's next week. Oh no, we will have one next week. It's the following week that I'm going fishing. I have 2 students that like to go out on a boat and go fishing. So adult students from here in Houston. So I'll be the last Friday of this month. We won't have one, but we'll have one probably next week. But if you guys click on that link, it should take you, I'm hoping, it should take you to a page where you can sign up. It's called Trumpet Q and A archive mailing list. And you can put your email in there and it will send a confirmation and you just click on that and you're signed up. Okay. All right. Well, that's the news, and thanks for hanging out. God bless all of you, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful week.